This is our project on giving effective feedback. My name is Griffin Sullivan, and I am currently pursuing a bachelor's degree in sport management. I am interested in becoming a professional scout for the National Football League.
My name is John Moynihan. I'm currently a junior sport management major looking to get into the marketing sector of the field with either a collegiate athletic department or a professional team.
Hi, my name is Noah Reese, and I am currently a junior sport management major looking to get into the operations field in a collegiate athletic department.
Hi, my name is Aiden Johnson, and I'm currently a junior sport management major looking to get into the field of sponsorship and marketing in the professional level of sport. So first, let's go over the goals and objectives for this webinar. So the goals and objectives for this webinar about effective feedback are to provide the class with an interactive way of understanding the SBIR model of feedback. From this webinar, we hope to provide you with a clear understanding of the step-by-step process and how to overall improve on these feedback skills. Being comfortable in both giving and receiving feedback is a key component in showing growth and change from the specific feedback. With the worksheet that will be given out for the workshop, we believe that it will help you draw from past experiences as well as identify potential change to become better and more professional in giving and receiving feedback through the SBIR model. During the workshop, you will receive a more hands-on lesson about what SBIR feedback is and why it is important for an organization's overall health.
Feedback majorly impacts people's careers and personal lives due to its criticality. The better the feedback, then the better people thrive from it. The majority of managers either don't want to or don't like to have feedback conversations with their employees. They don't have feedback conversations due to the conduct that is required from them. This conduct is connected to three reasons. They aren't responsible enough, they don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and they don't want to cause any drama. Managers become very uncomfortable when it comes to telling their employees what they do wrong. This was proven in a Harris poll where 69% of the 616 managers surveyed said they were uncomfortable when communicating with employees. 37 of those 616 managers are even uncomfortable giving direct feedback since they are worried that their employees might respond back negatively. Managers are uncomfortable with becoming vulnerable, recognizing achievements, delivering company line, giving clear directions, crediting others for good ideas, and speaking face-to-face. All managers face these insecurities, but they must realize that feedback is greatly needed for people to thrive. Imagine this scenario. You're preparing for a marathon, and instead of using a stopwatch to time yourself, your coach gives you the occasional good job. This helps you feel good about yourself, but in the end, you aren't bettering yourself, making the coach's feedback basically useless. The best way to offer feedback in this scenario is for the coach to use the stopwatch, write down your times, and then tell you what times you got and the improvements needed to better your time. This situation shows managers that their feedback is important and needed in the business environment to help the company succeed. Their feedback can't only be positive, it needs to be constructive as well. Now we're going to take some time to personally reflect on these feedback situations.
So what is feedback? Feedback, as defined by Merriam-Webster, is the transformation of evaluative or corrective information about an action, event, or process to the original or controlling source. This, as we will get into, is one of the most important things a manager can give to his employees, whether it is on a daily or weekly schedule, as many effective managers tend to do, so that his employees can learn or grow. But not all feedback has to be positive, and there's a difference between positive and constructive feedback, which I'll get into. But for now, let's talk about the 4 different types of feedback. Let's start out with the positive side of things. The first type of feedback that I'll talk about is called positive outcome feedback. This is used when a manager sees a task done properly and the outcome is favorable for that manager. And as simple as it sounds, the reinforcement is also as simple as a good job to that person. An example of this would be from my coaching experience and my former AAU team, the Mass Athletics. When kids would do something right, a simple "that's right" or "perfect" would let the kids know that they did the drill correctly. The second type of feedback is called positive process feedback. This is used in real time, not after the task is done, to show the person that they are doing well in completion of the task. An example of this would be from my internship at FMP Productions, when I was given a list of news contacts to update, as well as come up and reach out to restaurants who would be able to host a Boston Marathon watch party for a charity. Throughout the process, my internship supervisor would come over to make sure that I was on track with both assignments and just told me that I was on track and not spending too much time focusing on one thing. And now the negative side of things. But let's make one thing clear first. Just because these are titled negative does not make them negative. Let's throw out the word negative completely and replace it with something like constructive, because all feedback should be constructive. And to be frank, it sounds a little bit better, doesn't it? So here are some types of constructive feedback. And I guess for the Debbie Downers in the room, you guys can keep negative in your notes if you want to, I guess. So the first one is constructive outcome feedback. This happens when a task is completed but is not done to either its fullest potential or not done correctly at all. An example of this would be after this year's NFL season, when Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger on his weekly radio talk show got on and called out wide receiver Antonio Brown. Ben referred to the last play of the Steelers season, saying Brown should have run a better route. The second type of constructive feedback would be constructive process feedback. Similar to the positive process feedback, this is given in real time and lets the person know what they can improve on. An example of this would be a coach telling a player what went wrong on a certain play, letting the player understand what they did wasn't the best decision, and allows the player to fix that the next time they go out and play. Now, through all of these, there's one common denominator. What is that? The timing. Feedback should be given as soon as possible so that the person understands what you're talking about, can reference what they had done, and it allows them to understand what they can work on for the future.
Creating an environment for feedback is an important element for both giving and receiving feedback. This is called a feedback-enriched environment, and to create this, there are 4 aspects that need to be put in place. The first aspect is safety and trust, which is about how feedback will not be received in a positive or constructive way if the employer or an employee do not have a trusting relationship between them. This is when the work environment should be attuned to everyone's emotions and readiness, as well as showing respect for each individual and what they can bring to the team. Peers should really get to know each other, talk about emotions, and also realize that it is okay to say no sometimes. The second aspect is balance, which is the importance of having just as much positive feedback as one has honesty. Being honest and sincere is necessary in promoting growth, but highlighting the great aspects of a coworker's work is just as crucial. Balancing feedback starts with offering some positive feedback, but then to stop there. Really start small. Praise their effort, not ability. Each one of these points are key to not coming off condescending, insincere, and aggressive. The third aspect is normalcy, which speaks to the routine of the office. Oftentimes, a boss can create trainings or workshops to teach new skills in the office. The key to keep these behaviors going is to completely integrate them into the everyday routine. 2 of the rules here are to not wait for a special occasion and to work in public. This can be done with less harsh feedback as well as positive feedback, and to show your coworkers how feedback can be beneficial. The fourth and final aspect is personal accountability, in which leaders are supposed to lead their coworkers an example and take risks. At the same time, taking responsibility and changing if these risks fail is essential to this process. If people below you can make mistakes, you can too. The 2 key points here are to keep in mind are to be transparent and ask. Constantly explaining what is happening will keep employees in the loop and feeling good about their relationship with the leader. Asking for feedback can also open a door to show that leaders are open to receive criticism and can harness a better relationship for the work environment. An example that I can use from an enriched feedback environment would be from my internship this past summer, where I was the tournament director for the Amputee Association of Maine golf tournament. My job was to oversee all operations for getting all players, sponsorships, locations, and all the other amenities to complete the event. Since I was the lead person for the event, it was my job to give feedback to my coworkers and also my boss. The overall environment of the room was for everyone to grow with the event, and they required specific feedback that people would accept and adapt to. Everyone trusted each other in the organization and felt comfortable giving feedback to one another. I was always asking questions to my boss and other coworkers, and in a sense, I feel like that made them more comfortable with me and took my feedback and advice in a positive and constructive manner.
Giving feedback is one of the hardest things to do as a leader or manager. However, a specific model has been provided in order to help when giving effective feedback to others. This method is titled the SBIR feedback model. The model consists of 4 important steps when giving feedback. These steps include situation, behavior, impact, and response. Situation refers to identifying the situation at hand. In order to do so, the manager or leader must define where and when the instance took place he or she is addressing. This provides a setting to the person you are giving feedback to. Behavior refers to describing the behavior the person had when committing the error. As a leader or manager, you must remember to never make assumptions or subjective judgments about the behavior. Never rely on hearsay because it could contain other people's subjective comments, and use measurable information in your description of these behaviors. Impact refers to explaining how the behavior is impacted yourself or others within the environment. Make sure to do this by using I statements to correctly transmit the attitudes and feelings of yourself and coworkers to describe the behavior's effects. Response refers to the response by the person receiving the designated feedback. After being presented with the first 3 steps as well as the suggested adjustment, the response step correlates with how the person or subject takes the feedback and their following actions and behaviors after receiving the feedback. After giving the feedback, encourage the person to put themselves in others' shoes in order to intake all perspectives. This technique is called the perceptual positions technique. Also, give the person time to absorb the feedback and then provide potential actions that will help them improve their behavior. The SBIR feedback model is oriented to help people reflect on their actions, help people focus on what they need to change, and help avoid making assumptions which could damage relationships within the work environment. Here's an example of giving an SBIR feedback model within the documentary on Netflix, QB1.
We're the champions! We're the fight! Get out! I want to see another guy go hard! Dwayne! Come on, dude! You're trying to slow it! Come on, dude! Come on! Come on, dude! Come here! You good? You good? Hey, get over here and take a knee. Let's go.
You guys had a personal vendetta for those how long? Shame on all your seniors, man. Shame on you guys that divided yourselves to the locker room. Shame on you. Shame on you.
Can you close that door, Frank, please? All right, so here's the deal. You guys were voted as the 4 captains, okay? Which means you got to control that locker room for me. You know what I mean? We don't want any fights in that locker room. If there is, we got to see what's going on. You guys will report back to me, all right? You're a leader, whether you like it or not.
In the example, the coach identifies the situation by explaining to his players at the end of practice their habits of separation within the locker room. He describes the behavior when describing their personal vendetta against one another, as well as dividing amongst themselves because of their differences. The coach then provides his captains separately with the negative impact this division has on the team and its locker room chemistry. The response has yet to occur, as the senior captains must intake this feedback and respond through informing their teammates about ways in which to improve the team chemistry within the locker room. Another important aspect to remember when giving feedback includes the method of delivery. The method of delivery is a set of guidelines to use when giving feedback. It is important to use these guidelines in order for the receiver to understand what is being said and what needs to be changed. When used correctly, the receiver will use the constructive criticism to better their actions and behaviors within the environment. When used incorrectly, the receiver will armor up and become defensive, and the message will cease to transmit properly. There are 5 steps when focusing on the method of delivery. These steps include being direct but kind, listen, don't make it personal, be present, and inspire greatness. When being direct but kind, you must check your motives before the discussion. Your goal should not be to shame anyone or try to establish yourself as a superior. However, If you see an opportunity for growth, be direct. Don't beat around the bush. Don't sugarcoat. Include specific examples of desired behaviors to help illustrate what you mean. Listening provides a sense of respect for both people. Ideally, a feedback conversation is meant to spark learning on both sides. Therefore, you must understand the situation together in order to make positive changes. In order to not make it personal, you must acknowledge the emotions being felt by the receiver. It's easy to make things personal within a feedback conversation. Therefore, you must understand the feelings of the receiver in order to relieve them of the stress they might be feeling. When being present, show up fully for the discussion, and don't rush off once it's over. Be brave enough to allow moments of silence to come into the conversation. Also, don't forget to follow up with the receiver after the feedback period has concluded. In order to inspire greatness, make sure to communicate your aspirations for the person you're giving feedback to. Referring back to the QB1 movie clip, discuss with a partner if you believe the coach used the right method of delivery when using the SBI model to his players.
Here is what we think the coach did well with his method of delivery when using the SBIR model. The coach was direct with what he had to say, was present with his team, and inspired greatness to his captains toward the end. However, the coach failed to be kind with his presentation and word choice. The coach did not listen as he spent the majority of his time lecturing. Lastly, he did make the problem personal as he intended to shame the team because of their actions within the locker room. The SBIR feedback model is important, and if used incorrectly, the leader's feedback won't be heard or accepted the way it should be. The model must be used correctly so that an organization or team can succeed. The main goals of the SBIR feedback model is to help people reflect on their actions, focus on what they need to change, and help avoid making assumptions which could damage relationships within the environment. Its importance is helping managers and leaders better communicate feedback to their employees and coworkers so that they will make the necessary changes needed to achieve proper company goals and objectives. The feedback given needs to be positive yet constructive to help the organization or team flourish. In conclusion, giving feedback is not an easy thing to do. As we described earlier, most managers feel uncomfortable when giving feedback. However, feedback is extremely vital because employees must learn how to adapt and change their behaviors in order to benefit the company as a whole. The most efficient way to provide this feedback is through the SBIR feedback model. Identifying the situation, describing the behavior, explaining its impact, and generating a response are key steps towards improving all of the attitudes of the employees. Leaders and managers must also take into account their method of delivery in order for their employees to receive this feedback and to recognize its importance.